Hello students, and welcome to our Power Off 180 execution video. Before we jump into the cockpit, let's quickly discuss the objective of this maneuver and some key factors that we'll be focusing on. Power Off 180 accuracy approaches are approaches and landings made by gliding with the engine idling through a specific pattern to a touchdown on the runway. The objective is to instill in the pilot the judgment and procedures necessary for accurately flying the airplane without power to a safe landing. In this maneuver execution video, we will not be covering detailed aerodynamics, maneuver diagrams, common student errors, or the ACS standards. This video is to simply explain and demonstrate the execution of the maneuver and will vary based on the aircraft you are flying. To see all of the additional details we just mentioned and to study this lesson's full-length presentation, podcast, diagrams, flashcards, lesson quiz, and more, look up the Power Off 180 lesson on our website at wificfi.com. Lastly, before we jump into the cockpit, there are a couple of key factors that we need to cover regarding this maneuver. First, we are going to begin our flight on a left downwind leg to our landing runway. We're going to be about 90 to 100 knots on our speed, and we're going to be at traffic pattern altitude. So we're basically going to be all set up on downwind for a normal landing. We will assume that everything prior to this point has already been accomplished, such as the other legs in the traffic pattern, getting clearances from ATC, and the before landing checklist. We're going to continue on our downwind leg until we are abeam our touchdown point, at which point we are smoothly going to reduce our throttle to idle to simulate an engine failure. Now, immediately after the simulated engine failure, we will need to trim for our best glide speed, that's our VG, which in today's example will be 75 knots. So beam our touchdown point, power comes back to idle, we're pretending like the engine failed. First thing we're going to do is trim the airplane for VG. We will then continue on our traffic pattern and stabilize descent to the landing point. However, because this is an emergency scenario, we do not need to fly normal traffic pattern legs, and we can use flaps if we want to, and we don't need to use flaps if we don't want to or if we don't need to. Okay, in order to land on our runway safely and on our touchdown point. So those things are all up to us. You don't need to make a left base, you don't need to make a left final. You can just kind of curve it around, kind of make an arced turn, an arced kind of 180-degree turn to get back to the runway for landing. You can use flaps if you need to get down or if you need to deplete airspeed. You don't need to use them if you're low and slow. You do need to use them if you're high or fast. Okay, but all of these things are left up to the pilot's judgment. That's why this maneuver is so important to understand. We need to understand how to maintain proper control of the airplane and how to judge our gliding distance and our airspeed to the landing runway and land safely. Now, upon our safe touchdown, the pilot will maintain proper control of the airplane as it is brought to a safe stop on the center line of the runway. So let's head out there, simulate an engine failure in the traffic pattern, and execute this Power Off 180 for you. Okay, we are out here at our airplane. Again, just kind of want to show you how we're set up before we go ahead and do this Power Off 180. As you can see, we've adjusted our camera here so that you can see that we are on a left downwind for this runway. So we're flying parallel to runway 31 for left downwind. Everything has been completed up to this point. Okay, done the other legs in the traffic pattern. Before landing checklist is done. We've gotten clearance for our landing, everything like that. We can go ahead and pop inside and show you we're about 90 to 100 knots on our airspeed. We're at 95, which is perfect. And we're 5,500 on our altitude, which is the traffic pattern altitude. When I unpause the sim and kick the autopilot off, I'm going to go ahead and retrim it, and then we'll continue on with the maneuver. So that once we are, I'm just going to continue on this left downwind here, and once I am abeam my touchdown point right over there, the touchdown zone of the runway, I'm going to bring that throttle back to idle to simulate that engine failure. We're going to trim for VG, which is our 75 knots, start a nice stabilized descent at 75, and then we'll come around the traffic pattern. We'll use flaps if we need to. We won't use flaps if we don't need to. We'll make our turns sharp or less steep, whatever we need to do to get over and land safely on that touchdown zone. Alright, so let me go ahead. We're going to kick off our pause. We're going to kick off our autopilot. Again, I've got to retrim the airplane because of the autopilot. Let me trim that nose down. So our speed and altitude look good. We're going to keep looking outside at our left window to see when we're going to chop our power back to idle. We're coming up here, touchdown zone. So smoothly we're going to bring our throttle back to idle. And remember, first thing, we're not trying to fix it, nothing like that, not declaring emergencies. We're just going to be trimming for our nice stabilized descent of 75. As we're getting there, we'll be looking at our runway. I would say it's probably better to come in high on this rather than low, because you can't really make up altitude if you're low, or speed, but you can slow down by using, you know, our flaps, and we can slip and we can do all those different things. So we can slow down and go down. So it's better to come in a little bit high, make sure you're going to make the runway, than it would be to come in low. So I'm going to do just that. I'm going to keep my turn going, see if we can't get it nice and aligned with our runway. It is kind of hard to see it on the simulator as we come around, but we're going to do our best, watching our airspeed. As we're coming around, looking for our runway.
500.
Overshot our runway, that's okay. We're going to bring it back nice and easy. Good on my speed. I am a little bit high, so I'm going to extend that one notch of flaps. I like to wait until final to kind of make these judgment calls here. Second notch of flaps. We did overshoot the runway. Like I said, it is kind of hard to see the runway on the simulator. Speed's looking good. Okay, we're going to extend our flaps all the way to full here now, because we're still a little bit high and we've got plenty of air speed. So we got flaps full. Let's just go ahead and make a nice smooth landing, and then after we do, we'll keep it right here on the center line of our runway. Nice and safely, right here on the center line of our runway. As the airplane slows down, if you were on a short field, obviously you could use your brakes and whatnot. But we've got plenty of runway, so we're just going to kind of let it roll out. And then if you're doing a touch and go or something, you could go ahead, obviously bring your flaps up and begin your touch and go process. But we are going to end that video there. So thanks for joining us, guys. That's how you can make those different judgment calls as you get ready for your power off 180 approach and landing. Remember, you can cut the corners on the traffic pattern, so you don't have to do, you know, sharp corners on your legs for the base and final. You can use flaps if you need them. I like to wait until final, as you saw me do in this approach. I wasn't putting in my flaps and stuff on base, because if you put them in on base and then you get too low and too slow, well, then you're kind of SOL, right? You're not going to make the runway. Like to wait until final, see if we're high or low, see if we're fast or slow. Go ahead and drop those flaps in, put it down on your touchdown point, and then stay on center line and let your airplane slow down. That's it. Thanks for joining us, guys. Power Off 180. We'll see you on our next lesson coming up soon.